Talk, Sucio Talk. What is up, everybody? Um, we're here. It's live. Number four, numero cuatro. Um, I was charging my phone up a little before I could jump on the IG. Um, didn't set that up correctly, but here we are. YouTube, Facebook. All right. Um, where else? We're on Anchor. That's audio only. We are on Spotify, video, YouTube, video. Subscribe. Help me out. I always say subscribe. I know there's more of you out there. So hook it up. Okay? So here we are on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch as well. I recently started gaming again a little bit, getting to the playing some video games. I appreciate the art. I'm not gonna do that shit for 8 hours a day, but I appreciate being able to sit down for 30 minutes to an hour. That's about all I could play anyway. After that, I get a little bit, unless it's like a really awesome game, like Red Dead or GTA. I was into that when they came out, but I remember when I was young, I wasn't allowed to play that shit. And then I went to Puerto Rico. My dad was like, I got you, man. That shit was awesome. But anyway, grew up with a lot of video games. So grateful for that. Grateful for how I grew up. What are we talking about today? A lot of shit going on. Again with the fucking shit in Monterey, we had a tragic shooting. I saw Kelly Puleo's story. She says 36 shootings in 23 days. That's what she said. So I don't know what to make of it, but I think for the last year, I've been letting this shit get to me a little bit. What's going on in the world? What am I going to do? Why am I doing it? It's good to ask yourself these questions, but it's also not good to stay in this mode. So as I said, I'm getting my guns ready again to try to be a chef somewhere, an executive chef, and push. And when you think about that, they ask you, what is your cuisine? What is your cuisine, chef? I don't know. I have yet to find out. I'm over here personal chefing. That means you cook what they ask you to cook. So I think that if I learned anything from my career, you have to really set roots in a place and stay there for a time. A time and a place will be able to dictate what your food is. And I've also noticed there's a lot more sushi restaurants now. A lot more sushi Michelin star restaurants. 1 Michelin stars in, I believe, maybe I'm misquoting here, but I'm pretty sure it's in Ronert Park. I could be wrong here. Ronert Park, Michelin. Could be. Oh, Walmart tire shop in Ronert Park. Traffic news today in Ronert Park. Let me see. Should have this on Deckington right here. But anyways, we weren't going to talk about Michelin today, but my point is that there's a lot of 1-star Michelin restaurants in the Bay Area, not in San Francisco, and not in Oakland. The majority of them are like, Richmond, things like that. Those areas, the things you don't think about. Redwood City, just throwing names out there. I'm not sure if there's Michelin in any of those places, but I'm sure. I think San Mateo has one. Don't get me wrong. Maybe Andrew Cheng can school me. Speaking of Andrew Cheng, I'd like to shout out to Max Shapiro. Max Shapiro got an article in Fast Company The Instagrammer is reinventing the creative art of restaurant reviews. The unlikely tale of Max Shapiro, an elite Beverly Hills real estate agent, and how his funny, constructively critical restaurant reviews signal a new direction in criticism. Serving the diner. Imagine that. So shout out to him for doing that and putting restaurants on the map with his, his steez and doing all that. I don't know the guy. I do know he's got a little beef with Andrew Chang. Andrew Chang's my boy, so obviously, I got to represent. But it's all good. It's critics, They always don't fucking like something. But Andrew Chang is not a critic. So there's that. So shout out to Max Shapiro for that article on Fast Company. Good dude. From, people that listen to my podcast also probably listen to his podcast, So shout out to all the food podcasts out there. Pancon Podcast, Kimchi Podcast, Kimchi Kids Podcast out of Chicago. They did a cool interview with Danny Lee pretty recently. That's dope. With my boy Angel Barreto. If you guys need to see any of the older episodes of Sucio Talk, you can find them in my YouTube page, Sucio Talk. Subscribe, please. All right. You can also call in 510. All right. Started off 510-463-1145. That's the number. You guys go ahead and call. Call in, stories, shout outs, whatever you got. You starting to GoFundMe, hit me up. Let's talk a little shit. You know what I mean? Moving on. Somebody asked me today, they said they felt bad because nobody calls. Well, you know what? I'm used to it. No. It's the fourth show, and I don't feel bad about it. I don't let it get to me, really, when it comes to the podcast. I told myself that Sucio Talk is forever. I will forever do this podcast. So no matter what, you will have your Sucio Talk. Even, sometimes I skip a couple of Mondays here and there. I've thought about going to a season model, which makes it so I make 16 episodes, go on hiatus, and then come back. I'm thinking about doing that, but I also like doing the podcast a lot, and I like the hustle of it. And after I got my studio hooked up, I got on kind of like a one-track train thinking that I only could use the studio. But then I was thinking I could rent it. I could still go out to restaurants and get my interviews that way. You know what I mean? So that's what I think I want to do with this thing. I'm putting effort into it. I'm putting, supplies and money into it. And I know that someday, one day, this show will be the shit. And I'll have my own motherfucking show on TV. And it's going to be just, maybe it will be online because I don't think TV can take Sucio, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I kind of want to do some outdoor interviews with some chefs and then bring that to the live show and watch it with you guys. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking about getting, there's a microphone called a Rode microphone that has its, okay, let me see. I did it. I'm just checking my phone has enough energy to My phone has enough energy to do this right now. It does. Doing it. Live. All right. Bear with me. I'm setting up this live over here. I usually do that. But today, the phone was a little dead, so that's what happened. But here we go. Telling my followers that it started the live. All right. 11 minutes in. Half of this is to get you guys over to fucking YouTube. Go to YouTube, subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Okay? Let me know about what's going on out there, everybody. Starting to see the familiar faces here. Again, shout out to everybody out there. Sorry we started 11 minutes late here. I didn't charge my phone properly. And where I'm at, I'm not in the studio. I'm in La Quinta, California. I'm just explaining to my IG live people over here, all right, because I'm live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. That's where I want you guys. I want you guys there. Also, Beans, call in right now. Let's go, bro. You told me I'm going to call in 510-463-1145. I'm ready to go. All right? Call in right now, and I will answer. All right? Noah, what's up, Chef Noah? How you doing, man? I think he got married recently. I could be wrong about that. Okay, so here we go. We're live every Monday, 10 p.m. Tell a chef. All right, tell somebody. You call in 510-463-1145. You can get on the show, on the air. We'll answer questions live. You understand? So if you're out there, if you're bored, late at night, maybe doing drugs, or you guys, who's doing drugs out there? I know I will be after this. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, here we are, 11 minutes in, and we're on IG Live now, Facebook, Twitch, motherfucking everywhere. Sucio Talk, what's up? We're after service here. Yo, shout out to Spencer Horowitz. He just wrote an article today about chefs with ADHD, which I have. And let me tell you what. Call in, bro. Stop putting in the comments. You know what I mean? That's the number. I'm over here trying to read two things at once. That's why it's getting a little weird. But anyway, shout out to Spencer Horowitz. He wrote an article today in the Chronicle. And it's about chefs with ADHD. I also have ADHD. That's why I'm fucking... Yeah, you got it right. You got it right. That's why I am losing my train of thought here and thinking about 5 different fucking things at once. But that's okay. But read the article. I haven't read it because I don't subscribe to those mo's. But I probably should, right? Now that I'm sort of a journalist. I'm in journalism. So maybe I'll do that shit. I'm not sure. I had some thoughts today. Why are restaurants negative? Why are they negative? It always seems to me like negativity festers there, and I don't know if it's just because a lot of things go wrong in restaurants constantly. A lot of people don't realize that the problems for a chef, I'm just going to give you the chef perspectives. They start at about 4 in the morning, right? Because you're dealing with your fish purveyor telling you that your fish didn't get there. So at 4 in the morning, you get that call, right? And then you got from 4 to 5 to figure it out because 5 a.m. is the cutoff. And this is in the SF Bay Area where, here we go. I'm getting a call here. Yo, what up, chef?
Call from
Beans.
How you doing?
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Chef?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
Good, man. Nice to have you. What are you
Thanks
doing
for
right
having me
now?
on.
What are you eating something? It's
I'm
late at
making
night where you're at, right? Where you at?
I'm on West Coast time, over in Reno.
Okay.
Just doing a very complex dish right now.
Oh yeah,
Prepping for tomorrow.
what are you doing?
Making some overnight oats.
Oh, I got you. So just getting out of work or what?
No, just staying ahead of the curve. I was talking to my mom for a little bit. Just kind of took today to get some, errands ran and doing some stuff. And
Yeah.
like I said, we got a baby on the way, so that was a big factor of wanting to stay ahead on the dinner, morning prep, have everything ready to go. Kind of falling into some of the old good habits again. So
Right.
appreciating the Monday nights, listening to some of the banter and seeing some of the comments, people who are up late doing some things.
Yeah. I'm getting comments right now on the IG Live that people can't hear the call. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not set up for the phone on the IG Live to hear the call because I'm taking the phone call on YouTube. So go over to YouTube and watch it on over there. Everybody that can't hear the phone call. So state your name so everybody knows who I'm talking to here on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Full name's Josh, last name Long. I go by the moniker Beans. I've had that nickname for pretty much forever. It was an old Call of Duty nickname that just kind of followed me along because there's always Joshes, Jacobs, and Johns and Kitchens. So
Right.
Everyone gets the nickname, and you might as well have one that's kind of funny because, it's easy for people to remember. Everyone can say it.
Yeah.
It makes it easy. And it's not diminutive.
Right. And then where did you what was your first restaurant job? Let's just go through your history a little bit. I'm going to have you on the show eventually live.
Man.
But I just want to get, so that people know who they're talking to, what your experience is a little bit. Give us the row right now. What restaurants have you worked at?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I mean, for me, I've had, pretty different childhood than a lot of people. Grew up pretty much on my own. My teens, doing a lot of skateboarding, did a lot of filming and stuff, just trying to kind of stay out of trouble. Didn't go to high school, almost at all. I went to 4 different high schools, for first 2 years because I just hated it.
Yeah.
And, it's tough because, growing up poor and got, a big family and, we didn't have hardly anything. So, we really worked hard to help support each other and be positive for each other. And food was a major part of our lives. My mom worked in the restaurant industry. I pretty much, was carried by her while she was, waiting tables. So, restaurant world's kind of been in my blood since I was really young. And when I was really small, it was just me and her. I'd be waiting for her out in the parking lot for her to get off work with my uncle. So, yeah, being in restaurants was something that I was just familiar with growing up. And, as I got older into my teens, it was one of those, it was at a time when you could still do the job and not, have to do it legally necessarily. You could work for cash under the table. So I started doing a lot of small jobs and odd jobs that were kind of just varied. A lot of them were go meet up with this dude for this event, at this winery, or go do this, catering thing. And you're not even really doing a whole lot of food. You're just doing a boatload of prep. You're washing cases and cases of vegetables in ice cold water and spending most of your time in a walk-in and just kind of all the low stuff, But at the end of the day, you get $20, and that $20 is make or break for a lot of families. You can buy a big, couple of pounds of beans, you can buy a bunch of rice, and I mean that's going to keep everyone going for a while. And we were big hunters and outdoors people, being fishing types, so that was where we got a lot of our protein. So you had to be really creative. You had to really kind of think of ways to make a meal stretch, how to make your little sisters, have venison, 10 different ways, in the course of a month. Yeah. So it's definitely, part of early life, was just, centered around really appreciating food because we didn't really have hardly anything, and we just had each other. So that was, the best thing we could have ever had. But, getting into my teens, that's kind of where, I was on my own at that point, and you're just kind of like, all right, what do I want to do with my life? You know, a lot of my friends who were skateboarders did a turn pro, or they turned into burnouts. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right, like that's the thing. And I just figured, you know, the best thing I could do is kind of stick out this restaurant idea, because at least it's got some legs, and see where it takes me. And that's kind of where I talked to this restaurant owner who was starting up a restaurant down in Central Valley and Visalia, which is like south of Fresno. People who haven't been through that little part of the town, but it's like a little foothill town. You know, now it's pretty big, but back then it was mostly like farm workers, gangsters, and that's about it.
Right.
You know, and you know, we lived out in like the cuts out by where all the farm workers were. You know, so it's like that was like a main part of my upbringing too, was like being out in the fields a lot. Like my uncle worked in the fields, so it's like being out there when I was younger, seeing that kind of upbringing, and knowing like I wanted more for myself, you know, than to be out there in 112 degrees, just like backbreaking work.
Yeah.
So that was something that I was really trying to kind of like push myself to do more. And when I talked to that restaurant owner, his name was Mateo Watkins. He was originally from Napa. He cooked at a lot of the traditional Napa spots, a lot of the wineries, a lot of like the fine, you know, fine dining-esque sort of things that weren't like French style food at the time,
Right.
70s and 80s. And then he got into traveling abroad, and he started cooking at a bunch of different restaurants over in Europe, doing like the apprentice style chef upbringing. He cooked for a lot of the big dudes out there, the Michelin 3 types, and he ran into a lot of people who are now, you know, very famous people kind of doing the same thing he was doing. And he got some crazy photo albums and some crazy stories to go along with it. But yeah, it was an interesting first restaurant job, because I started doing, you know, dishwashing, busing, and barely any prep. And I think a lot of that was just him kind of like coming from that apprenticeship background of like, you start at the bottom. So, you know, I'd never dealt with the public before. I never had to be nice to people. And you get these like super entitled, rich people who come through, and they just think they can talk down to you. And, you know, I grew up in a biker family, so it was like I was not about to have people, you know, put me down for the job I was doing. I was proud of the job I had, because I was toiling in cash and I was doing it legit.
Right.
So that was, you know, that was a big deal for me. It was like the first time that I could actually make serious money where I wasn't like in a field, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, there was times where, you know, some of the work I was doing in my teams, you get paid a lot of money, but you're working with very shady dudes that you definitely don't want to get involved with long term. You know what I mean?
Right.
You $200 an hour, but you're catering at like a cockfight in the middle of like an orchard in like the Central Valley. So it's like super, just like it's grimy, and you're like, man, this is not what I want for my life.
You know,
so,
I always wondered who caters orgies. You know, like what?
Yeah.
And then also, like, what kind of food do you think they would serve at the orgy? If you were the orgy chef, what do you think you would cook?
A lot of finger foods.
There you go. That's smart. Little bites. Take it easy. You know.
I will say I did do some catering for some friends who were very tight with like the Armory Club in the city. So yeah, I would definitely say finger foods are a must. Alcohol is a big one, and just things that kind of have very neutral palates. You know, you don't want to go too crazy on the acidity and burn anyone's tongue.
I love that you have a whole thing already thought out. You're like, you really need to think of the flavors, the smells. You know, the room's gonna smell a bit.
Exactly.
You got to plan on those things.
Yeah, it's a big one for me. Like, you know, I'm sure a lot of people in the service world, especially people who cook, you know, definitely have very sensitive palates already. You know, you can walk through a soap aisle and you start choking up.
That's true.
It's something I think about consistently. You know, it's like having a strong sense of smell because you have a stronger palate. It's like, yeah, you want to go easy on people, especially when they're in a very vulnerable state.
There you go, man. Well, thanks for being the first ever caller on Sucio Talk. I really appreciate that. We've been trying to get Andrew Cheng just joined. I was talking about him in the beginning of the episode. Because Max Shapiro won an award. Apparently, him and Andrew Cheng got some beef going on here. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. If anything, I'd like to have a panel podcast and see what's up.
That'd be cool, man. Yeah. I love, like, after I didn't really know anything about him until, you know, I've been following your podcast since you started it, you know, since we met way back before the pandemic. And it's like, I appreciate those types of diners who have that experience, you know, and I always appreciated having the feedback of somebody who goes to a lot of different places, has a very diverse palate, has a very wide perspective, and is also just a cool person, you know, to give you feedback.
For sure, man.
Like, that was cool. That's not for me so much, but hey, if it was working for you, you know, keep doing it. But it's like, it's sad to hear that there's people out there that are giving them beef. I'm like, man, I would appreciate having people who are that big of fans of the industry come through my doors, because at least I know like I'm going to take care of them and they're going to appreciate the time and heart that I put into every dish. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we gotta protect them all. If we're gonna if we're gonna protect the critics, you know, you can't really then not protect the people who aren't, you know, over there bashing and having a hard opinion on things.
Yeah, and I'm super, you know, appreciative of anybody who travels too to go, you know, eat, and just that's like part of their fun when they go vacation. It's like that's what my wife, when we go anywhere, like that's what we look forward to, is like, let's go find those spots, you know, the places that are, you know, they have the repertoire. It's great, but it's also fun to find those little hole in the wall spots that not many people know about, and give the local people your business, you know, that they may not turn up on a guide somewhere, or they may not do anything that's like super flashy, but they're consistent and they've been doing it for years and they're doing great, you know, and it's a great experience. So I was super jealous of seeing all those guys out in Japan, man. I was like, man, I want to go to Japan so bad.
Yeah, I've been watching them too, man. That's dope what they're doing. You know, but he's doing it. That's the thing. Like he's just getting out there with his own money. Ain't nobody funding his shit. Ain't nobody sponsoring him. He's sponsoring himself. And I think that is dope. He's a true fan, and he's really putting himself out there to eat these meals, you know, regardless of with who it's from, but with who it's with. But he ends up at the table with some fucking dope-ass people, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, and that's the thing, man. It's like I feel that way. Like I started back in 2003 in a small, you know, 3-person kitchen lineup where the CDC was a Greystone, you know, CIA grad. The head chef owner was like a apprentice chef who worked like under dudes like Marco. You know, it was this like crazy background. And then to like myself being in Michelin 3s down the road, you know, to have that feeling of like full circle. And when I never thought I would ever have a chance of eating in one of those places. I only knew that I could maybe get myself to cook in them, let alone actually, you know. So it's a pleasure anytime I get a chance to experience somebody else's, you know, hard-earned work. And
yeah. Hey, let me ask you this. What do you think? Did you see the David Yoshimura thing? They wrote an article about him. He was charging $1,000 as like a kind of like an Airbnb experience for you to go with him, check out the farm or whatever it is. Yeah. And I didn't like how the article read, because it kind of made it seem like, you know, throwing a little bit of shade at him. And the way I feel about it is, you know, the guy's putting himself out there. He's trying to bring in extra revenue to the restaurant. He's trying to, you know, do all these things that everybody wants, right? Oh, a good chef should have health insurance. A good chef should pay for all this shit. And he's just trying to fucking do it. And then he gets torn down on this article. Apparently the article wasn't that bad, but the headline was, and I'm sick and tired of this clickbaity titled shit that makes like people aren't going to read the article. They're just going to look at the picture of David and be like, that guy's a fucking douchebag, you know?
Right. And I think the media, just to kind of like, I see that for exactly what it is. I think like what you said was on point. And when you're talking about it last week too, like to a certain degree of like, people got to start thinking outside the box of like the typical restaurant model to figure out how to make it sustainable, but also equitable for all the people who are putting in the time and the soul into the place to actually make it worth everyone's while. Yeah. Not just the people who work there, but to the customers too. And I think that's, you know, that's an important thing, is to have a connection to your community, not just as a paycheck, you know, but to also see them as peers, is to see them as people in your community, and to have that relationship with them that you can build that trust of, they know when they come in and you're charging, say, a little bit more for something, or you're going to do, you know, private dining service and you're closed for some reason and they can't bring their date in for whatever they had, you know, in mind, that they're not going to take it personally and be like, oh no, they do great work, they're really working hard, and they're trying to do something more than just, you know, make money. Right. And I think it's easy for the media to look at it in the context of like, I mean, especially you know, coming from Puerto Rico, I'm sure you saw like a lot of people, you know, anytime there's a hurricane out there or something going wrong, like you see a ton of people who just flock out there to go get the photo op, to do basically like tragedy tourism. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's sad. And those people don't actually do any helping. They're just like, look, I moved the box, you know, and they pay a ton of money and they fly on private jets and they make it seem like they're doing something more than they are in a lot of cases. Whereas you have guys like Jose Andres, you know, who are banging out thousands of meals per day, and they're doing the work to really help people when people are in need. And I think the media kind of looks at anybody who tries to make money when things are going wrong as like with a slighted, you know, kind of sense of like, well, what are they really trying to do here? And I think it's because they don't trust that people are really trying to do the right thing and trying to create something that is lasting, that is more of a community center. And I think it's great that, you know, people like that are willing to put themselves out there as chefs to open your kitchen up. Like I told you recently in that DM, I was like, man, we went to a friend of mine, you know, good buddy of mine, Rick James. We all used to live in the city together, you know, great friends. He lives out here with us now. And he was like, hey, you know, it's my birthday weekend. He's like, yo, I got this, you know, extra ticket to this pizza thing. I know it might be a little bit, you know, not something you're into. I was like, hell yeah, let's go. That sounds like fun. You know, it's like I can always learn something from somebody else. And
Yeah.
we go in there, there's 9 people. He's charging, you know, $95 per person. And you basically get like the whole, you know, from 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon as an open book. Like you're making the dough from scratch, you're making the mozz from scratch, like from curds, you're melting it. He's like walking everyone through the process of how to do it right, how to make the sauce, you know, and he's giving people pointers that you would take years in the kitchen to learn if you just sat there with your head down and you had to work all the different stations. And here this guy is offering you like the fast pass, you know, version to like epically good pizza. I thought it was a great experience. And towards the end, you know, he's like, I could tell you had some kitchen experience before.
Yeah. Exactly.
like, no one just sticks their hands in like super hot water with mozzarella. Usually they like,
he thought you were infiltrating his class because you had fucking experience cooking.
Dude, yeah. And I'm sure he probably had a fear of like, oh, is this one of those media type people who's going to try and like, you know, grind my gears for like trying to make money. But I'm like, here he is on a Sunday, no one's in the restaurant. Like they already have everything prepped for the afternoon. Like why not make some extra money? Because you can pay your people more. You can offer your customers a better experience by including them in the process and showing them all the work that goes into what you do every day. And I think it's a great thing. I think people just get hung up on the dollar amount. Like, oh, $1,000 to go work for free in a kitchen. Like, well, you're not working for free. You're not working at all. You're paying for the experience of somebody who spent years cultivating all of these different, you know, ways of doing things, and everyone does things differently. So, you know, you could go to another kitchen, spend another $1,000 and learn a whole other way of doing the exact same thing. But like a lot of my early teachers in kitchens, especially out in Europe, used to say like, there's more than one road to get to Rome, you know, but they all lead to the same place. Right. So I think it's important that like, you're not getting a better experience because it's $1,000. You're just paying for that person's time. You know, and I think it's important that we support people who are willing to put themselves out there, because chefs are scared to like open their kitchens up. Like, is this a health inspector coming in to dog me, you know, when I'm down? Exactly. You know, like people have those real fears. And I feel like it just builds more trust in the community, and it builds a lot more appreciation, I feel, on both sides, not just for the customers seeing like what chefs do, but I think also seeing like what the customers are into, you know, like it's a really good way to get a litmus test on the people around you and be like, what could I be doing better as a restaurateur to support my community and maybe give them something that they're not getting, you know, anywhere else. Maybe I can provide that for them. And it's a very open feedback where you're like on a level. So I think it's great, you know, and like I told you too, like long time ago, because I mean, I've been cooking since 2003, you know, and it's like, back then, like early days, French Laundry had a program like that. I got some buddies that I could ask and see if there's still something like that, but like you could basically pay to like do a stage, but it was part of this like inn, you know, experience where you're like getting dinner, you're going to stay at the inn type thing. You're going to be there for a couple of days, and you wanted to be immersed in that experience. And I thought that was smart back then, because I'm like, most people will go camp out in the woods for a stage like I used to. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Where were you camping, and how was that? So, and how'd you even get the idea to stay in the tent while you staged?
Oh, bro, like a lot of times I didn't even have a tent because I was too poor, dude. I had like a tarp, you know, and I was on like a messenger, messenger style bike, like a fixed gear with like what I could fit in my messenger bag with my knives, my apron, my shoes, like a couple of supplies. And I mean, especially like traveling like down the like Pas de Calais, you know, which is like Highway 1 of France. Once you get off the ferry over in Dunkirk, it's like you can ride that all the way down to Paris if you want. And we did do that for one ride, because a bunch of buddies of mine from the city and from London, they were working with Nike at the time, and we did like a London to Paris ride in like 3 days, which was like brutal, intense, you know. But then I was like, well, I'm already out here, so I'm just gonna keep going, you know. And so it was really cool to be in these places where it's like crazy, like World War II. There's like German bunkers, you know, kind of like, you know, on the coastline if you go up like north. you'll see like all the, you know, crazy concrete gun emplacements and stuff. So I slept in a lot of those.
Damn.
You know, and so you get to meet people, and then they're like cool with you, and they're like, oh, this guy doesn't suck. Because like when you come from, you know, America, especially back then during like, you know, just barely post Bush years, like everyone always blamed you for Bush. Why you vote for Bush? I'm like, bro, I wasn't even old enough. You know?
Right.
But
That's
still,
funny.
you take it on, or the slack of being like, you know, California, and they're like, oh, California, you're too cool for that, you know. And I'm like, nah, dude, actually, I'm, you know, just camping out by the river with my bike, and you know, just trying to, you know, learn what I can and move on to the next place. But back then, it was like a different culture though too. Like it's kind of like the what you talked about, like the whole stage thing. You know, it's like things are changing, and back then, like that was people like, you know, for me, that was my only experience to ever getting into one of those places. And it kind of sucks that you're not getting paid like per se, like, but you're getting cash in the table. You're getting staff meal 3 times a day. You're getting, in, you know, about 2 or 3 weeks when people find out like you're cool to be around, they'll invite you to couch crash or sleep in their hallway. You know what I mean? And it's like then you build these long-lasting connections with people who eventually go on to open their own things down the road, which a lot of them did. So, you know, it was a really cool experience to be a part of it back then. But yeah, it's like as much as people want to romanticize that world back then, it was pretty gritty and pretty tough, you know. And it's like you're dealing with like train type, you know, hobo robber dudes and like just weirdos, and you got no money, so it's like you really do have to be smart about what you do because you can't make any mistakes. But you know, it was a fun experience, and I look back on it with, you know, a lot of love for all the people who gave me a chance, because that's really what it came down to. It's just opening up and being like, yeah, we're going to give this kid a shot. We'll see what he can do, you know, and as long as you are willing to show up and be a cool person and be open to new things. I mean, whether you're like a chef, a restaurateur, customers, a regular person, like you can learn a lot from people. You know, you just have to be willing to open your mind and be accepting of what they have to teach you.
Right. The whole stage situation, in my eyes, I feel like if you volunteer for something, if you signed up to work for free, then you take on the responsibility of whatever that means. And I don't want to say that, like, sit here and say that all the stagiaires of NOMA were oppressed. I mean, I just refuse to believe that, you know, people were. Have you ever staged there?
No, I did not. So I did get to go through the kitchen. I knew quite a few people from the early days. I actually got to meet Renee back when I was at Quince. He was doing like his first book tour, and he was actually doing a dinner over at Chef Daniel Patterson's spot right around the corner over on House Goods. So I got to meet him briefly, but that was kind of like at the same time, you know, when it was like everything was still very new for that kind of a model. And to my knowledge back then, he didn't seem like he had a ton of money backing him, and he really was like out in the cuts trying to like figure out how to like build this new restaurant concept. And I thought it was a cool idea. He seemed like a super nice dude, like just a genuinely nice guy. But I can also see like now, you know, like all these years later, how a system like that can become like a machine. You know, it's like I was like, there was one conversation I had with Bourdain a long time ago, and he brought up like the Emerald machine. Yeah. And I was like, dude, that's such a concept, man. Like, I never thought about restaurants to ever be like that. But he's like, yeah, think about it. That guy's got like a spot in Disney World. I'm like, whoa, you're right. You know, like this guy's got, you know, multiple cookware lines. He's got food products out there. He's got thousands of people relying on him, and his name is the branding, you know? So it's like you become this machine that is bigger than you personally and your wishes, because now you're open to all this like corporate investment. And now you have all of these, you know, people out there who are totally doing a different thing than what it was when you were trying to like have this cool concept of like, I'm going to go forage and put together really intricate, unique meals that are true to, you know, someone's heritage or cuisine from their area. And I thought that was a cool concept, because that was a big deal back then. You know, like I cooked at a place called Le Grenouille, which is, you know, on the same, you know, coastline of France. And it was like a Michelin 2, 3 in the 60s. It was like a 2 when I was there. And it was just a trip because like they were so proud of the local cuisine. That's all they served. And like you said, when you sign up for a job, you don't know what you're getting yourself into necessarily. So it's like, you may sign yourself up for some free work, but then I found myself out doing, you know, crab fishing in the middle of Normandy. So it's like, all right, you know, I got that experience too. And it was fun because I got to meet those fishermen. I now know those people at the market. Some of those people now have an oyster spot, you know, where they do ballons, they do all kinds of cool stuff. So it's kind of what you make it, You know, it could be a really great experience, or it could be a really terrible experience. And I do think that a lot of people who had bad experiences with staging, especially when that corporate type machine was built and there was a lot of money floating around, they were doing some things that were cool, because back in my day, there wasn't dorms that people could go crashing, you know,
Right.
like your housing wasn't covered, your food wasn't necessarily covered. Like if you got staff meal, you were lucky because you were the one making staff meal.
Yeah.
You know, like you're the free labor, so it's like you're the one doing the work, so everyone gets to sit down for 5 minutes. And when you're eating staff meal, you're eating it while you're working on the next dish, getting ready for prep for service. So it's like I never sat down, but at least I had something on my stomach to keep going. So it was like it was different, you know. It was very different, and it's hard to look at like what a lot of modern cooks are coming from, because they're coming from a more structured background. You know, things
Yeah.
aren't so wildly off the cuff, and I appreciate the voice they're bringing to the table, because it is having an impact in a good way. Because I mean, like I said, like my mom was a server in restaurants. Like I worked from the bottom up. Like there was no money involved unless you were working. Like I was when I was in my teens, I was doing like 120-hour work weeks. You know,
Right.
and on Sundays I'm scrubbing the hood with that toxic orange stuff with all the skulls on the bottle.
the shit that
you know?
foams.
Like,
You're like,
yeah,
what is the foam?
just like Peligro, like all up on it. So I'm like, yeah, man, that is not good to be breathing in. And when you like spray it, it like gets in your nose somehow, even when your mouth is closed. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, but you got to do what you got to do to make money in that world. Back then it was different because you could get away with that. And there, you know, I wasn't going to those countries trying to become like an illegal immigrant, like trying to get on like their tax code system or trying to get any of their benefits. Like I didn't have healthcare. All the cooks I worked with did though, which was a trip. Like I didn't even know anybody in California that had healthcare in
Right.
the restaurant industry back then. But they could, you know, get burned or cut. They go to the hospital, they get stitched up, they come back, and I was like, how much does that cost you, dude? And they're like, nothing. Like, what a concept.
That's
you
a
know?
very good point, man. I don't think people look at it that way. The fact that if you
Yeah, dude,
stage in Europe, they have free health care.
I got burned in Paris really bad with a bunch of duck fat in my elbows one year, and I mean, they were like, you can go to the American hospital. I'm like, what the hell is that? And they're like, oh, it's where you pay cash. I'm like, no, I ain't got no cash. I'm like, yeah, like my few euros have got to stretch like the next 3 weeks, man. Like that ain't gonna happen. You just put some, you know, vitamin E on that and just hope for the best. And,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you know, but I do think that there's a point that there should be some bigger discussion about, you know, not just the restaurant industry, because I think it's too easy to look at them as a pinnacle of being like, oh, it's their fault that these conditions have persisted. It's like, well, maybe it's true they haven't like done anything proactive to help, but it's really hard to sustain a machine that pays all of those people and does all of those things and still maintains, you know, a somewhat interesting quality that people want to continue to go there and support that model. But to also look at like the infrastructure around them, you know, and I think like in this country, we have a hard time just agreeing on a lot of things politically, but I think a lot of Americans at this point are pretty much set on the idea of like, yeah, we put a lot of money into our taxes. Why can't we get, you know, some kind of nationalized healthcare system that if you're a cook or something, you could take somebody to the hospital and take care of them? Because I was always the guy, especially cooking in San Francisco in small restaurants.
Yeah.
If someone got hurt, like especially like our guys who, you know, I've told you in the past, like I've worked with some amazing dudes who are, you know, from like Yucatan, and you know like speaking Spanish is not their first language. You know, like their first language is an indigenous language.
Right.
Spanish is like a second language, and English is a working on the third type of scenario. And then, you know, for them to get cut to the bone, you know, with a knife in service, then you take them down to, back then it was SF General, now it's like, you know, Zuckerberg Hospital, but it's like you take them down there and you get discriminated against, and this dude's squirting blood everywhere. And you're like, bro, we didn't got powers for you to reattach his thumb tip, you know? But they're like, well, we need to see immigration status, we got to see all this. And I'm like, just take care of him. Like, that's why we had Healthy San Francisco, I thought. But, you know, a lot of that whole system was a whole trap all into its own. That's a whole other bigger discussion, you know, where it's like, yeah, all these people thought they were paying into Healthy San Francisco to take care of people like that in that instance. But, you know, there we were, 3, 4 in the morning, and, you know, SF General was not a fun place to be 3, 4 in the morning.
Did you say they changed the name to Zuckerberg?
Yeah, it used to be SF General over on Potrero.
They changed the name, so Zuckerberg got the hospital named after him.
Pretty sure. I'm not 100% on that, but I remember when they were like doing the remodel, it was like the Zuckerberg hospital thing. So I'm like, I have to Google map that.
You changed the world. That's all you get is your name on the fucking hospital. Your name on a school.
Dude, it's all about that tax harvesting loss, man. That's what they do. They're
Yeah,
like,
right.
oh yeah, I spent a bunch of money. I donated. Well, it's a loss. So now I've got to recap all my losses and I don't have to pay
Yeah.
more into the tax code. And it's like, that goes back to the whole infrastructure problem. It's like, got a lot of people making money in a small area like the Bay, but you don't see the effects of the money at all because it ain't there. It's like, it ain't being, you're spending money at the restaurant, but like I said, like even Healthy SF isn't enough for people who need real help, and some of us have gotten hurt really bad over the years where it's like, you're not down for a night or two, you're down for like weeks,
Yeah.
and it's like, now you got to worry about rent. Now you got to worry about bills. You got to worry about food, and you got to worry about even keeping your job because, being at will employment, everything can change for you. So,
Yeah. Especially those cutthroat kitchens where,
Oh, yeah.
if you're
Oh, yeah,
struggling,
dude,
if you're struggling on like Fish Station and then you get injured, you better hope the next motherfucker isn't better than you. Because
Oh,
when
yeah.
you
No,
when
I
you
mean,
get back, you ain't gonna be on Fish.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I remember those types of old school kitchen management, that would like look at third-degree burns and laugh it off. Like, I've seen worse. Get back to your station or
Yeah.
don't come back tomorrow. And there's nothing you can do, And then a lot of those kitchens, and I won't name them, but I mean, some of them now are Michelin threes. Like, I vividly remember hearing, like, not the owner of the restaurant, but like the CDC go like, well, I don't know what to do about that other than tell you maybe this ain't for you. And that was his answer to a dude who's like, his skin is sloughing off at that point. And you're like, bro, like maybe we should take him to the hospital first before you start talking.
It's all good.
Hey,
we got a question here. In this day and age, is staging sustainable?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? Okay, heard that.
I think like you said, it comes down to, are you agreeing to a stage with no limits? Like, are you agreeing to go work for somebody with no food, no money, no housing? Because, I just telling you first-hand experience, like I did that and it was not great a lot of the time. Sometimes it was great, but it wasn't always great. But is it sustainable? No, in the sense of like monetarily, it's not, because you can't work for free forever.
Yeah,
you may learn a lot of stuff, but you're not gonna open any restaurants because people are just gonna be like, wow, you worked at a bunch of places. And I think the industry for the last at least 30, 40 years has really pushed on this idea of like, you have to work at a place for like so many years before you can really understand how to like run a business. But
yeah,
there's also, people like in my experience where it's like, yeah, I worked for places for a few years, but there's a reason why in some cases you move on, because you're like, hey, I love the people, I love the space, I love the restaurant, I love the food, but at the end of the day, it's like, I want to learn more, and you may not be getting it there. So you want to go find something else. So, I mean, there was times where I got looked at negatively on my resume because they're like, well, why are you only there for 6 months to a year? And I'm like, well, because that was a foreign country.
yeah.
what am I supposed to do, bro? Like, they're not going to give me a visa to go do cooking. Like, you kidding me? Like, they say that for engineers and shit.
I also think about the fact that as a stage nowadays you get paid, and you can only stage up to 4 hours in California by law, right? So
Yeah.
you don't really get a chance to see if somebody can perform. You don't, like, I used to go on stages, and then at the end they would give me ingredients and be like, go cook a dish, and like,
Yeah.
to see if we like you, to see if we like your food, or we like at least your train of thought. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, I love Chef Tusk and Lindsay Tusk. They're some of the best people I ever got to cook for in my life. And it was also in the scariest stage, like on the spot moments I've ever worked with, because I had just gotten back. This was like 2009 when they'd moved locations from the old location, which is, now Octavia, to where it's now over on Pacific Ave. So, I mean, I was in a kitchen full of cutthroats that were, hardened, seasoned French Laundry dudes. The CDC had worked for Robuchon, and he had, a bunch of experience in London, and that's where I'd just come from, was London and Paris. And he was just like grilling me every second he got during the interview of like, who'd you cook for? What's his name? Can I give him a call? What's the phone number? I'm like, yeah, here you go. But it was great. It was a great experience because you're put on the spot, and it's like, I feel like that's a great filter for a lot of people to just see how you do under pressure.
Exactly.
Is this kick in a cave when it gets tough? And then the first thing he does is like, I went straight from the interview to right in the kitchen. And he was like, all right, well, we got some black bass here. Let's see what you do. And I was like, oh, shit. So what do you want me to do with this? He's like, well, they're whole black bass. We only have a few of them for service tonight. It's for tasting menus, so we don't have much product to work with. Here's we're trying to go for like a 2.5 ounce portion. going to be on the plancha. This is what it's going to go with. And you're going to have to butcher it and start from scratch. And let's see what you do. You've got less than 3 hours before service go.
Yeah.
And that was, that was a crazy experience because I don't think they did that for everybody. I think a lot of it was more like, we're going to put you on garde manger and see how you do. This was just like,
yeah, exactly.
Because
yeah.
it was on my resume.
We're doing 400. Let's see.
Right. And like where I cooked, like that's why he was very much like, well, let's see if this kid's, BSing us or if like he really wants to be here, sort of the thing.
Well, all they want to see is how you react to going down. Because they know you're going to go down. You don't know everything. You know what I mean?
Well, they want to see if you can ask for help.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you can ask for help.
I think that's where staging is the sustainable experience model. Like we don't have to do it the way it's always been done, where you don't get paid and you're just getting paid in quote unquote experience. Like I think there's a way we can modernize that model, but still get the good things out of it. Like being a stage, you ask a lot of questions. You're in a new place. You don't know anybody. You don't know anything about the culture. You're just like, in some cases you don't even speak the language. Like I know some kitchen French, but I don't speak French. You know what I mean? And like it's a scary experience because now you're being put in these tasks where you're like, they're showing you what to do, which is the beauty of food is that you don't have to speak the same language to get the same result.
Yeah.
But it certainly helps a lot, and I think as a stage, you learn really quickly, like, yeah, what do I have to do here? Like, and then you get stuck really quick and you're like, do I cut it? They only told you how big to cut it dimension-wise, but not how thick. Or, like if you're doing like a sous vide, like, are you incorporating anything into this, or is it just going to be a plain old white sous vide? And you don't know like what the differences are going to be chef to chef either, and depending on what shift you pick up, they're different slightly. And same thing was like back at Quince, like when I'd first started there and got hired, the next day, like it was even scarier because that same pressure was on me every single day because, the CDC was very adamant about like how he wanted things done. And even though we were kind of like Italian focused dishes with pastas and, very eloquent, tasteful ways of modernizing some of those dishes with California, ingredients, since we, had that benefit of, not just, normal seasonality, but we had a very unique type of seasonality working with farms. And very early on, he was like, yeah, we're going to make Robuchon potatoes. I know you know something about that. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, this guy had worked at Robuchon Vegas, not Robuchon Paris. And I, been through the atelier in Paris a couple of times because I have some really good friends who are still out there. And I was like, oh no, what did I just sign up for? He's like, yeah, we need that every day by 5. And I need a third pan of it, by the way. And I'm like, oh, bro. And this is not coming from like Robuchon Paris. A lot of times they do like those dehydrated, like the Larotte potatoes that are like,
the Larottes.
Pelletized. Yeah, but they're pelletized already, so they're devoid of moisture. All you're doing is emulsifying them into butter, and you're gold.
Really? Yeah, that's what my old chef used to work at Robuchon. That's what he said. The potatoes came in bags because we would make Palms Robuchon all the time. Do you think that if you were to say, do you think that Palms Robuchon gets made as much as it used to get made in today's day and age?
I think it is like fair to the concept of like 50-50, butters to potato. I think that concept is still like part of the genius of Robuchon is like his ability to simplify the most amazing things across everybody's differences and palates to find the thing that everyone can agree on and like, that's good. And he was always one of those dudes who continued to perfect that system, like, because the original way he did it was, taking Larottes and boiling them and then peeling them while they're boiling hot, scalding hot so they steam. And then you put them on the sheet tray, put them above for a little bit so they can air off some of that steam, get some of the moisture content out, and then they go straight into the pan with the butter, and you're emulsifying basically like rubber, but it's napalm at the same time, And
my ratio was, what was it? 6 potatoes, 2.5 pounds. That was my ratio.
I mean, some guys would try and cheat it when they would cover my stations because a lot of times I found myself on which was funny, like in France, like entremet tends to be more of like a pastry type section.
Yeah.
Whereas like here, everyone calls entremet like anything that has to deal with like, pickup of the dishes. So
the
like
sides.
Sausage, the sides, the vegetables, and it's all the stuff that no one wants to do. Everyone wants to be on a meat station or a fish station or a pasta station. No one wants to be on garde manger or entremet because it's brutal work, man. It's like you're putting in work for every single dish in that restaurant. Like you're touching every single dish in that restaurant almost every single day. So it's immersive, but it's also challenging, especially when you have somebody who's above you who is like throwing the Master Chef challenge at you every day by 5.
Yeah.
Bro, and are we even going to need a third pan of Robuchon potatoes? I don't know, but I mean, that's what he wants. So that's what I'm going to do, and that was on your prep list, and you got everything else done throughout the day, and then
you always got to make a little more, chef. What are you going to dip bread in at the end of the night?
Well,
you're going to fucking snack attack, baby.
Well, by that time, you actually have people who are starving because, they've been running around. It's, a lot of the servers, and I appreciate that you've made mention on your podcast 3 times of making, a distinction that there is no front and back of the house or, anything like that. It's just the house. And I think that was always important, like giving people a little taste of what we were doing in the back, like we were saying, like kind of spreading that awareness of like, here's what I'm slaving on. When you see me sweating bullets in the corner and I can't talk to you about something, it's not because I'm being an asshole. It's because I really got the pressure on right now to deliver a consistent result every single day. And it's not always easy. There's times where it's like we would have like Alice Waters come in for a birthday, and it's like that's on deck. So now you've got to completely shift gears and you're doing, back then we were doing probably like 2 to 3, PDRs a night on top of regular service. So, you're talking 2 tasting menus of at least 10 courses plus, any kind of like VIP type dishes or suits or different Elmies bushies for different customers, bar menu type items, and you're doing support for pastry. And then you're doing those PDRs that all have completely different menus. So it's like, and you're doing that during service. There's nobody who's picking up those dishes for you. It's like that timing has to be on point, and it's tough because it wears people down. And that's where the extra mashed potatoes come in handy at the end of the night. Everyone comes by your station and they're like, dude, you got a little bit of that meat, you got a little bit of those mashed potatoes. So we do a little snack plates for everyone so they could taste some of the fruits of everyone's labor. And it's a collective effort, and they don't feel like, oh, it's back of the house. Like they felt like they can come back there, and then we weren't going to like bite their heads off,
Exactly.
And it's a good opportunity to be like, hey, sorry, man, I was being a little bit of a dick earlier. Just, I was in the weeds, just trying to get out, and they're like, oh, same here, no worries, man. And it calms things down. So, that was kind of the benefit of making extra of everything. But yeah, and there's times where I think being a stage is sustainable in the sense that it delivers an experience that's unlike, I think, anything that I've, because I didn't go to culinary school, anything that, I've experienced with people who did go to culinary schools, and they're amazing chefs.
Yeah.
But in times of pressure, did they ask for help? No. And then who has to run over and redo a whole spermato of morels or something? You know what I mean? Like things that take time. And all it took was, maybe that person could have felt more comfortable asking questions. So I think like a lot of that too is just coming to everything with like the beginner's mindset, being open to new things, and people have different ways of doing things. And sometimes you might find a new way of doing something you've been doing every single day a little bit better. And that's where Robuchon, he perfected those potatoes because he figured out, dang, I'm making my poor guys get scalding burns every night making these things, to that old style, like turn of the century recipe, versus I could just pelletize these, streamline the process, get the same result, and people appreciate the product that much more because there's not all this toil behind it, and those people can go on and do other more creative things with their time versus it's just sitting there and shredding potatoes with a bird's beak, they're on fire.
Do you,
I think that's,
you just said bird's beak. A lot of people don't call their, I remember saying, I said bird's beak somewhere, and somebody was like, what the fuck did you say to me? Bird's beak, chef? And I was like, whoa, man, I'm sorry. It was a French laundry guy. We won't say who he was, but they can't stand bird's beak over there. So don't say that if you go stage over there.
You can't say bird's beak everywhere.
Exactly.
But if you say bird's beak in most kitchens, I feel like in this country at least, they'll be like, oh, I'm familiar with that. What's it for?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got to explain like,
what is your favorite kitchen tool? Favorite kitchen
Mine?
tool? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Obviously, like for me, the knife has always been the most important thing. I've had knives since I was a kid, growing up hunting. That's, you can take down a huge animal and butcher it down with like a 1-inch little knife. Everyone thinks you need a big old knife to do, big tasks, but you don't. You just have to be smart about how you deploy it. And yeah, I definitely say the knife is probably the most important thing. I've always had one on me since I was really young. Even, when I was traveling, it was always a pain because it was not easy post 9/11 to travel with knives.
Right.
And you could carry on, so it was even more risky. Like, are they going to even show up, when you get there? And especially like at the time, like I didn't have like super epically nice knives when I was like early years, like a lot of us would spend good money on like Kasumis and Kikuichis and Macs and stuff because they were good. They were thin knives and they were easy to sharpen and maintain. So yeah, I would definitely say like, aside from a sharp mind, sharp knife is the most important thing you can have in your toolkit because you'll bail you out a lot of jams.
Yeah.
And
I'm a rubber spatula guy.
Dude, that was going to be the other one. I'm using one right now.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, you use it every day. You use it more than you use your knife. I mean, that thing takes a beating.
And I feel like I've got a lot of my kitchen tools that I'm looking at right now in my Bane because I'm always going to have one near me. And I, still have some of the tools that I've carried with me over, the 20-something years of cooking. And it's like I'm still like right now using one of the silicone spatulas from France that I've used forever because it just won't die.
Yeah.
And the corners don't break, and I'm just like, man, this thing is like keeps going. I'm gonna keep running it into the ground until it's done. And
is
then
it the mafter? The little
What's
egg?
up?
Is it the mafter? The little
Oh, I know what you mean. Not the plastic ones, but like this was like back when like Le Creuset and some of those other like manufacturing people would do like the beechwood handle.
Right.
But then there was like a really good silicone like head they would put on there where it wouldn't slip off if you were doing something like super sticky.
Right.
And it's really easy to maintain and clean because I a lot of times would just cycle the same few out in my sanitation bins. I would just be like, okay, next dish sets for the night. And I would just reuse my tools because I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a full stack like. I remember kids who had like tubs of gear. It's mostly, culinary students, and they show up and they've got like a whole Tupperware thing and it's like full of stuff. I'm like, bro, like I get by on like 4 or 5 tools the whole night.
Yeah.
Like, what? And most of them are spoons,
Somebody on the chat said that a rubber spatula in Mexico, they got a funny name for it. It's called a miserable for a rubber spatula. I mean, I think the best thing that somebody ever said about a rubber spatula was my boy Cyrus. Cyrus, he was like, I'm like a rubber spatula. I get it all. And I'm like, that's so true, man. There's nothing more satisfying than clearing out a mixing bowl of some sticky substance, and it's like clean. You're like, do I even have to clean this,
Oh, dude. I mean, having just moved into a new space and, finally got the Vitamix unpacked, I was like, I want to do some hummus, and I did a big old batch of hummus. And like first thing, it's like I actually got a couple of new silicone spatulas recently. I got some of those like GIR ones to try them out because like they're everywhere. I've seen lots of homies use them. I'm like, I'll try it out. But I'm so used to like the wood handled ones. Like I know what happens with those. If I leave it on the edge of a pot, it's going to get hot. Like, I just know it too well. So I was like, oh, we'll see if these things melt or something happens bad to them. They make the really, really long, skinny one.
Yeah. And
it's like a mini version of the French one I've got. And I'm like, man, I've kind of fallen in love with that thing because it gets down into like the base of the Vitamix. I'm like, man, if I would have had that like 10 years ago, how much time I would have saved. Just mind bending, like how like a simple like addition to a tool design can change the game, especially when you're doing the same task like over and over again in volume,
Yeah. I've tried to get used to those slender rubber spatulas, the ones that
a lot of them are too flimsy.
Yeah, they're too flimsy. Williams Sonoma, a lot of people give them shit, but they actually have the best one out of all those. But I don't go in there enough to get one and keep one,
Oh yeah, and it can be a little on the pricey side, so not accessible to everybody.
Exactly.
So.
My personal chef client, I brought him to a restaurant supply store, and he was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, it's like they got those thin cast iron pans there. I forget what brand they are. I don't think they even have a brand on them. They're just like riveted. There's 3 rivets. The handle's kind of like heavier than the pot itself.
Oh yeah, and those are my favorite.
Yeah,
super protein, man.
Yeah,
they keep the heat. They're not super thick either. You can still like hold them near a pass, and they're not going to like burn a hole through the pass.
Exactly. They could take a beating. Those are the first pans I learned how to cook meat on. Grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah, I've been looking for those myself. Funny enough, you mentioned Matford. I've been looking because I made the switch to induction for stovetop after cooking on pretty much fire my whole life. Early life, we cooked on a lot of campfires, outdoor fires, especially growing up. Like definitely a lot of outdoor cooking. Most of my early life up into my teens until I was in a professional kitchen, we start really like, cooking with gas. And it wasn't until I was in Europe for the first time did I really come across induction. And I was like, my mind was just changed. I was like, dude, in my apartment, like I had one of those electric stoves, like the coil stove, and like I could turn that thing on for like 2 hours and I couldn't even boil a cup of coffee. Like water. And then I
awesome.
see this, the single standalone thing, and I'm like, dude, I'm boiling like a whole 8-quart in like 2 minutes. I'm like, what is this magic? And so, I always wanted to be, eventually when the cost came down, I wanted to find one, and got lucky on the Black Friday sale and picked one up, and I've been, tinkering around with it because it's different. It's definitely different in terms of like, it's great for cooks because everything needs to be prepped before you even hit the stove. And it's great because then you just bang through everything in under 10 minutes, you're done. I'm like, God, this is so much more efficient, and I wish more restaurants had, like induction tops to cook on, not just like the single burners that we're all used to. But yeah, I mean, it was like catering, in the UK. It's like they were smart. They knew what they were doing and they were on the road. So they had to light, fast, efficient. And yeah, that's been kind of a change too, because your cookware changes. Like you're saying, cast iron works the best on induction. Stainless, as long as it's a ferric stainless, works really good on induction. So yeah, the only bummer is like a lot of the copper pans I bought over the years of like, French, like bracants and stuff for like French yard sales.
Mm-hmm.
I can't use any of those on here. And you can put like the interface plate down, but I'm like, I'll just save them for outdoors. I'll just get like a outdoor fire to keep the, outdoor fire cooking thing going, because I miss it. It's like everyone gets into like cooking on a hearth, and I know this. It's like it's hard to ever, take that away from your experience, because the smell, the product of the food, the care that goes into it, it's just a different ballgame when you're cooking on fire directly.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the next project for the summertime. Got to build myself a hearth that I can actually do some stuff and do some bread too. So yeah, that's a big one. Can't forget where you came from. And cooking on the fire is about as real as it gets. It goes back to the beginning of mankind itself.
Fucking right. I'm looking forward to. I got a little tasting coming up in Austin for a tasting menu fire cooking restaurant, and I'm looking forward to fucking smashing that tasting so I can take that position. And
nice, man. That was a question I had for you, if you don't mind. I know I'm taking up everyone's time. It's already late.
No, it's all good, bro. It's all good. Hey, while I'm doing this, I'm just scrolling down your page here and actually showing it on the podcast.
Cool.
You got a lot of knife stuff going on. Have you been getting into the knife sharpening?
Yeah. So I was so after all of that experience at Quince, funny enough, the guy I worked right next to the whole time, he was on meat station, eventually became the sous chef for meat, Galen Garrettson. Great dude, love him to death. Him and I worked side by side on the Bonnet at Quince, and that was like the first, pass of people coming through the first like rockstar team.
Yeah.
And when I first met him to do that black bass thing, I mean, he had just fallen on the Bonnet and like burned the hell out of his arms, and like he was all wrapped up and he was back at work already working the meat station. I'm like, bro, I want to be good friends with this dude. So I had a lot of respect for him, and he was just such a fun dude to cook with. Eventually, after I'd left to go work at Apple, of all places, it was about a year after, he had started Town Cutler, and that was over at Bush and Jones, across the street from one of my good old friends' houses, Bike Messenger skateboarder house. So I was like going up there and hanging out, and that was kind of when I was getting back into doing like skateboard video and like bike video stuff for like Mecaframa, which is like a 6-gear bike video that we did for a few years.
That's dope, man.
And so I did some video content for him just to kind of help put it out there. So like I'll have to show you a couple of the videos we did back then, and just photo stuff, because it was the homie who was starting out, and I appreciate what he was doing, and he was getting some of the better knives, like at the time that you couldn't get access to, because you just needed to be a dealer to even talk to a lot of the Japanese makers at the time. So yeah, he was a cool dude, and we were just buddies. We'd hang out in the shop and stuff late nights, and then eventually I became manager there. 2 years leading up to the whole COVID breakdown, I took over as manager from Angela Caja, who is also an amazing chef from originally from LA, but was cooking in San Francisco at SPQR, and she was great. She was an awesome mentor, and she definitely broke me into like, okay, it's been a while. You haven't been around a service type situation where you're talking to customers directly.
Yeah, I did something. They kept your ass in the back for too many years.
I'm a little too direct, I'm very
Yeah.
honest about how I feel about things, and I'm not going to hold back. And she never told me to ever, but she was just like, yeah, maybe give people some, options to work with when it comes to knives, because they don't know as much as we do going into it. And so she was great to work with. And I was sad when she left, because she left to go do private chef gigs down in LA to be closer to family. And, we still keep in touch. And then the COVID thing was not even a thing yet. And we just hired 2 new people who were awesome. Sable, who was also a chef over at KFICO at the time, she was awesome. And she'd actually cooked with a friend of mine who was a sous in the Quint's kitchen, from the new location and from the old location, Jared Sipple, who now runs La Costa out on the East Coast. Amazing people, so it was like, truly is a small world in the kitchen world. It's like you always got to be good to people, because 10 years down the road they're going to be doing something important. And it was nice to have that kind of connection with somebody that you'd never met, but you have that common bond with somebody who was just an amazing person in the kitchen that had a very positive impact on you. And Jared was one of those amazing chefs, to work with, where it didn't matter how bad you were in the shit, he was always a cool head. And I always shared that with him, because I never got mad. And it was like, well, what are you going to do? You got to siphon, 20 quarts of chicken stock, and you're going to burn the hell out of your mouth. So do it with a smile.
Fuck
And,
yeah.
and so working at the knife thing was cool, because I had always sharpened people's knives late night, and something that I'd been passionate about for a really long time. And learning how to do it as a production model was very different, because you're dealing not just with like your 10 knives or the next guy's 10 knives. You're dealing with like close to 100 knives, in a 24-hour turnaround between 1 or 2 people. Is quite a bit to do on its own. Oh yeah, dude, you were flying, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy, and of course you've got the things that take more time too, like if you're doing like serrated knives, things like that, or scissors. And it was a challenge, because every day it's the same kind of thing. You prep your station, you get set up, and people start coming through the door, and you just kind of deal with every day. Like you got a guy who comes through with like a Spartan spear from Berkeley, and he's some like Berkeley professor. He's like, can you sharpen this? I'm like, bro, I don't think you should be walking around the TL with a spear on your back. But I mean, it was an interesting experience, and that's what led me actually out here to Reno. Was we were taking new clients. We're doing custom like steak knife orders at the time, and I'd actually gotten reached out to by Jacqueline Dasha.
Oh, really?
And,
Jacqueline
yeah,
Dasha reaching out to you.
Well, because she was looking for steak knives, and this was for metalwood at the time. And she's like, yeah, we're looking at a few makers. I don't know if you have any time to chat. And I was like, hell yeah, I do, because I knew who she was. And I was like, man, like I was already enamored with everybody from the metalwood kitchen, because everyone I met from there was always the coolest people. I was like, man, like, and I got to go through the kitchen at one point in the early days, but I didn't get to eat there, sadly. I really wish I would have just taken the time to eat there. But I was with some friends who were doing like wine buying and stuff, and they were just like checking places out for venues. And that was a great venue space. And that was back when it was still like very like white slatted walls and stuff, not like the more recent variation before the fire.
Right.
And it was cool. It was very cool. And talking to Jacqueline was amazing, because we spent at least couple hours just talking about our backgrounds, just like, where'd you start? How'd you get to here, basically? And it was one of the coolest conversations I've ever had with somebody in the cooking world, other than this right now, and she just left me with that feeling of just like, man, like the next generation of cooks is like a whole other level than anything we've ever seen. I can't wait to see what she eventually, one day, hopefully she opens something, because I cannot wait to go through those doors, man. It's going to be next level amazing. And to see the attention to detail she's putting into things like the steak knives that were going to be used at the table, even though you're not even seeing that experience.
Exactly,
she's
right.
taking that kind of care of like what kind of pins, what kind of wood goes into it. And eventually she's like, well, I'd like to bring you up to talk to Chef and just kind of get some of his ideas. I'm sure he has a lot of questions. I would love to have that opportunity to talk to Chef Costa. And like I told you in the past, like I always looked up to him, because he had that same kind of apprenticeship background of going out to France and really putting up the time of just like sleeping in shady places and trying to make the best out of a not great scenario, but learning a lot and having a great experience and some fun stories to tell about afterwards. And it was crazy, because I would have never thought in a million years, we were sitting in that area as my wife and I. It was like the hotel lobby area where the tea and coffee and stuff is by the big fire.
Right.
we're just sitting up there, and I'm thinking like, okay, he's gonna send one of like the commies, or some porter's gonna come over and be like, come on, come through the back door or something. It was Chef. He comes right out and he was like, hey, nice to meet you. I really appreciate you guys coming up. It's not an easy drive. I was just like, are you kidding me? Like the kind of hospitality that somebody extends that has that much already on their plate to do, just to go over one small detail of production within their system, like a steak knife, is mind-bending to me. And I'll always appreciate people who take the time to just have a discussion about something that you're passionate about. And yeah, that always struck me as just like, man, like the kind of people that really truly care about what they're doing. And we got to stand in the kitchen and we were starting to talk about knives and talking about the different types of patterns that we were using. And he was asking about like the rounded butter knife type shape. And I was telling about how like a pope had installed this like law in the 1600s because people were picking their teeth with like the knives at the time. And he was trying to get people to stop picking their teeth at the table with the knives, so he rounded the edges. And that kind of put a stop to that for a while. So that whole
That's
butter
good
knife
history
pattern
right there.
Yeah, for real. And so, but he's the kind of person who cares about those kinds of details when you're talking about a bunch of different styles of something on a table in front of you. And, being at that chef cutting block and having seen, the 12 days and seeing all the legends of all the stuff, leading up to that point, in history was just really cool and very special to be in the kitchen. And it's always fun too when you have everyone else around the kitchen, because I've been that guy where they're like, who the heck is this dude? What the heck's going on over there? What's chef got going on? But you've got enough going on that you can't actually look. It's like, oh man, I wish everyone would have had time to get to check out some fun edges and stuff. But that's when he was like, hey, you guys hungry? And he's like, we don't have any space tonight in the restaurant, but definitely could, go over to Charter Oak and talk to, Chef David and see what we can whip up for you over there. And I was like, okay, let's go check it out. So we had no plans of doing anything other than just talking about knives and hopefully making some for the restaurant. And that's when, you and I had met, and that was a trip, man. That was the last meal we had in a restaurant right before COVID hit. And
fuck, man.
Seriously, one of the best meals that we've had in memory, and all of our travels, like we still think about that lamb. I'm just like, dude, next level, talking about roasting on fire, man. And I mean, that's still something that I keep in my photos to go back to every once in a while and just be like, the appreciation of those
man.
moments.
I'd love to see those pictures, man. That means a lot, man.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
the last meal before COVID, Charter Oak.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, dude. We're sitting at the bar playing with knives, and all the customers are looking at us like, who the hell are these dudes?
Yeah. Just fucking
but I mean,
nerding out. That's cool,
the kind of crew I appreciate being around. And, that's what brought us out here to Reno is once we had to close the San Francisco store, which was the flagship and the original location, and the Chicago store. My wife's family is from out in this area, so we're like, well, what the heck? Let's just try and make a move, and see if we can make something happen out here. So moved out here and worked out here for another, about a year and a half, making knives out of the warehouse where he was doing chef's knives and steak knives and everything out of there. Also doing the legendary Town Cutler palette knives and some of the gear I'm sure a lot of people, still look for every now and then. But yeah, it was a great experience. And I left last August and, mostly looking to regain some time and to get some composure, because even during COVID, like a lot of people got to stop, but we never stopped. We kept going and we were passing the whole way through.
I can hear that.
It just didn't feel like there was a break for us. And now it's like, okay, now, we got a little one on the way. We've got, some new things to be looking forward to in life. And, what kind of a schedule do I want to set up for myself? And, out here, there's a lot of cooks who don't have access to good tools or to great sharpening. So it's something I'm looking at kind of doing where I can bridge the gap, because still got a lot of sharpening clients in the Bay that, still hit me up from time to time. And my wife works for a company out there. So, we go out there pretty regularly, go visit home, see all the friends and fam. And, it's good to be able to I'm going to have to just start bringing my stones out there, or just leave my stones with somebody. Might leave my stones with you. Just
do it up, bro. Do it up, man. Well, next time we have you on the show, we'll have you on in person, live. And
that'd be cool, man.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to.
I know we've been trying to make it work. And,
I mean, it's all good. It was good to have you on here. This was an amazing fucking Sucio Talk live. First person ever to call in. So fucking
Thanks,
Josh Long, here we go. But man, I'm going to shut this down. fucking thanks for calling in, man. I really appreciate it. We always keep in
Thanks for
touch on
having me, man.
IG, so I'm not even worried about it. I'll talk to you soon,
Yeah.
brother.
Sounds good, bro. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, man. Peace out.
See ya.
And there you have. Oh, Francisco trying to get on here. He said, "I'm next, yo." Okay, call in, baby. Let's go. Let's go, Chef. You know the number. 510-463-1145. All right. I think we got another chef wants to call in. Wants to call in and talk. This is going to be a fucking long live Sucio talk. Oh, on YouTube. You want to talk on YouTube? Okay. Let's see if I can make that happen right now. I was about to shut this thing down. 3 are watching on Sucio
Another
Talk.
chef wants to call in.
Wants to call in and talk. This is gonna be a fucking long live Sucio Talk. I'm on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube. You want to talk on YouTube? Okay.
It's weird because I'm watching it on YouTube and it's taking a little bit of
shut this thing down.
It's a little slower than what I'm
watching
seeing.
on
Sucio
Another
Talk.
chef wants to call in. Wants to call
You
in
should
and
you
talk.
should call in on the line.
Fucking long live Sucio Talk.
What is the number
I'm on
here?
YouTube.
Hold
Oh,
on.
on YouTube. You want to talk on YouTube?
See, now there's too many Daves in that conversation. You see that? 510-463-1145. Shout out to Brienne. I worked with Brienne at Tallulah on Thames in Newport, Rhode Island, long ago. Francisco, call me, bro. 510-463-1145. You might have to do that +1. Shared Cultures in the house. What up, Shared Cultures? How you doing? Elena Sue in the house. And check out her podcast, 100 and something. I forget the number of it. They got some pretty cool shit going down. And I wanna bring everyone from IG over to YouTube, because then you can see what I see. I can see what you see. And then we can search Shared Cultures on IG on this computer here. And then here we go. Lunar New York shop update 128. You guys are doing all types of shit. You are entrepreneurs. 10K followers? 10K followers? That's what type it though. Okay, I'll type the number, Francisco. I'm sorry about that. Shared Cultures in the house. 10.1K followers. How come you guys didn't announce that? Maybe you did. 1,000 followers ago. Maybe you did announce that you fucking got that shit. You guys, you sly devils. 510-463-1145. And then I think if you're in Mexico, you might have to add the +1 to this thing. But Chef Francisco from Mexico City is about to call in. Shared Cultures is busy right now. What are you guys doing over there? You guys driving around, dropping misos off, making miso. You guys are working at the midnight hour, the witching hour over here. So yeah, I just did a cool call with Josh Long. Apparently, I've been wanting to announce it. Well, Suso Talk is a good place to announce it. For all those on IG Live, Mushroom Hunt just did a 2-day successful mushroom hunt last weekend by Shared Cultures. So here, well, if you didn't announce it, I'm going to announce it. Shared Cultures has over 10,000 followers on motherfucking Instagram. That is a large feat, All right, for a small business, we got Mexico City calling in right now. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah.
Call from.
Hello.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Hola.
Yo,
Yo, what up?
is it Sucio?
Yeah, man, this is he.
For real?
Yeah, man. You're on Sucio Talk right now. You're gonna be on the podcast when I put
shit.
this.
What's up, dude?
You're live, bro.
Oh shit, cool. It went through. I was like super surprised about that shit.
Nah, bro, it's gonna go through, man. We're in 2023. We're in the future, you know. So, how you been, man? What's going on?
Good, man. I've been living in Mexico City for the past, I don't know, 3 years now.
Yeah,
It's been a wild fucking ride, you know?
yeah. How's that going over there? You know, I was recently in Mexico City, and somebody was talking to me about the corruption that it take. You know, just running a business over there is hard because you got a lot of factors coming at you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. So just a little background since I've been here for the past 3 years. So I worked for a couple people out here, some restaurants I'm not going to disclose.
Right.
And, I started realizing that I'm pretty good at having turnkey operations where, like, I go into a space that maybe was a bar or cafe or whatever, and they want to turn into a restaurant. And, it started off super easy, like, hey, make a menu, figure out the SOPs, whatever the fuck. And to be honest, man, going from that to, like, knowing what it takes to run a business in Mexico City and in Mexico in general as a country, or, like, the corruption and everything, it's a real thing, dude.
Right.
It is a very real thing. Like, you have to deal with the government, the corruption. I've, not me personally, but I know of major companies, big business people paying thousands of pesos to, be able to operate.
Right.
Like for me, like the Mexican mafia has nothing to do with the cartels, but has everything to do with the government.
Right.
Okay. So like the way that you do business in America and the way that you do business here is night and day. I've told a couple people, that come from the U.S. and like, hey, I want to open a restaurant in Mexico City because shit's popping because of the 50 best. Michelin Guide is going to be here this year. A lot of the world's attention as far as like producing a project is coming down here. With digital nomads, with business people, with restaurateurs, with companies. Everyone wants to come down here. Like there is money to be made because it's actually, if you think about it, like comparison-wise, it's pretty sustainable. To be honest, like you can actually make a profit here, but you have to know how to fucking move. Like you have to know who to go to, who are your lawyers. I don't know what you call it in America, but basically un gestor. Un gestor is basically like the person that's in charge, not a lawyer, but make sure that your paperwork is in fucking order, that you're good.
Right.
You can get a standard liquor license, like, and I'm just talking beer and wine, from 5 p.m. No, from like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can do that. It's optional to have insurance. So as a business, like if you want to, you came down here and you told me, hey, I have, pesos-wise, I have 1.5 million. I can fuck shit up with 1.5 million pesos. You give me 6.5, it's a whole nother ballgame. You're talking 20, you're talking Pujol money.
Right.
But you have to know how to move that shit. Like everything is basically optional. And knowing where to go from your architects to your designers to your plumbing, your electrical, everything, you just have to know how to move. Like, and people will make all these things like, oh, you need to do this and do that. But there's always a way around it. There's always a way around it, and people in this country will always try to make a way around it. And it's actually very interesting if you think about it, like from an American perspective. Like, if you were to open a business, there's no way you can open your business without having insurance.
Right.
There's just no way. But if there's some TV, so I guess like city zoning, like you can work your way around them. You can't do that shit in the U.S. There's no way. And that's been the really interesting thing, is like learning how to move businesses in Mexico as a country compared to America. It's ridiculous.
Damn. That's fucking insane, dude. So you're down there for 3 years. Are you going to plan to staying down there? You going to come back over here? Where are you going?
I don't know. I like it here. I think it's nice for what it is, but I feel like there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen with Mexico. I think that, I've had a lot of friends that come and visit, you inclusive, like when people tell me like where they're going to go, it's usually all the places you just hear about. Like I call it the big four. The big four for me, like if you think about any like major city in America or in Europe, there's like the big three, the big two, like the place has had 3 Michelin stars for the past 10 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it may be.
Right.
I guess Mexico City doesn't have that, but what they do have is the big four. The big four for me, from highest to lowest, would be like Maximo Bistro, which is like, I think up in solid good food. I think second to that would be like Quintanilla, and then Pujol, and then Rosetta.
Mm-hmm.
And when you Google like best restaurants to visit in Mexico City, those are the 4 that you get right off the bat.
Right.
Like if you're in San Francisco, you think about like in San Francisco proper, you think what? Back in the day, like Cezanne, Bennu, Quint, and now we're talking outskirts like Singapore. But there's always like that big 3, the most predominant restaurants.
Right.
And for me, Mexico City, as far as that goes, it's the big 4. But what people don't realize about Mexico City, and I really want them to understand, is that the reason I came down here is because I saw like these really great chefs that are doing so much hard work, and they're just completely underground. There's this whole underground scene too of Mexico City dining. And I'm talking fine dining or rustic or casual. I'm just talking about people that are producing great products. There's probably 6 restaurants that I would keep my eyes out for. Like my eyes feel like in the next, 5 years, they're going to be the ones that everyone talks about. They're going to overshadow those people. And what sucks is that, locals recognize them, but, U.S., Asia, Europe, anywhere else doesn't, because they're overshadowed. And that's like really shitty to like see. Like
Right.
These people with an insane amount of potential who are producing really good work in a prodigious way, and more than anything, have a sustainable business. Like that's the most important thing to me right now, is like, yeah, you can cook really good food and be the most badass chef, but if you don't know how to keep a business and sustain it, I don't know, what are you really doing at that point? Like, you
Right.
can be producing the most badass dishes in the world, but if you can't make that sustainable, not just for yourself as your business or like your partners or your investors, but your staff, your dishwasher, your line cook, then I don't know, what are you really doing? Like, what is the definition of a chef? It's not just like cooking. It's like you're the person in charge of the hospitality, like, place. Like, I don't know how to phrase it, but
I get what you're saying.
in that sense, like if you're really a chef, you have to know how to move yourself around and make not really good product, make people come back, but make it like sustainable for everyone as best as you can. You might not be perfect at it, but you do the best you can.
Right. Wow. So you started on this mission 3 years ago, and there's no end in sight, it seems.
Yeah.
But you just did you told me you did a tasting recently with a family member of yours, no?
Yeah, so it was weird. Like that was probably it was a pop-up actually. So it was like the first time that I felt comfortable. It's gonna sound really weird. Um, Being Mexican.
Right.
Um, my career, I guess, like started in Morelia, Michoacan when I was like, I don't know, 13, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I was born in the States. I was born in East LA. And I didn't really start cooking at all, until I was in Mexico. Like cooking was always like an interest to me,
Right.
something that I thought it was always like really cool, but I didn't know that you can like make a life out of it. You know, like I just thought like, oh, this is a really cool hobby. Like I really like doing this. So when I got to Mexico, you know, we can get into that later, but my options were like very limited, and I needed a job, and I started, you know, my first job was at this place called Los Guaraches de Los.
Right.
And for people who don't know what huarache is, it's like kind of like an oval sope. Or I don't know if you guys ever had that. Um, you know, it's like beans and this meat or whatever, like whatever. But that was my first job, and I started doing that, and then I realized like, oh, I can make money off of this. But later on in my life, like it just made sense that I would want to pursue this. And then when I started like working in, you know, more serious restaurants, I realized that this is something I really want to do. And as I was going through it, I realized, you know, I put up with a lot of shit with different chefs and realized like, I don't know, like how, more than anything, like how people behave in those places. Like I think that at some point in your career, like you learn the right way to do things because it just becomes very, you know, apparent to you. Like if you're fucking up, like you need to do a good job.
Right. Right.
But more than anything, I think that you learn what not to do. And I think that's where we are right now. Is like, you know, we learn from our chefs, and you know, we can hype it up all as you want, like in social media and mainstream television with Bear and the menu and all these things, and like talk that shit up like it's tough shit. It's completely unnecessary. And I think that if you're a chef this day and age, like, you know, with all these different restaurants like innovating and whatnot, I think our role moving forward now is not about what cool new dishes we can do, but like how can we like change the framework of the conditions that we were exposed in to still benefit the business, because at the end of the day, that's what's paying our bills. And stop thinking about like what's the next cool shit, like what's the next like W, what's the next Noma, like no, what's the next business plan?
Right.
Like seriously, like we can shoot the shit all day and collaborate and make some cool shit, but you know, you have all these restaurants, like especially here in Mexico City, it's like, I don't know, like I read all these articles about, you know, different restaurants, you know, I don't know, per se, what was in, you know, places that I've even worked in. And I think like, wow, these people, you know, for better or worse, they did some cool shit. And it's like, I don't know, like I think that we'll always have the creative space to make new dishes and create new techniques and whatever. I think we'll always have that. I think we're at a cross point where it's like, what is that it? Like, or are we going to try to do something about everything that's wrong with staging, with housing, with, you know, how much we pay people? Like, to me, that's super important. It's like, I can try really hard to make the best Kuno dish, you know, but like, I really think about like, how can I give my people like, you know, 3 consecutive days off, you know, pay holidays, insurance, like that's what's important to me. I think that's going to be the defining factor now moving forward. And especially here in this country where it's like people are so abused, like insanely abused. Like it's insane. Like you need to follow this page on Instagram called Terror Restaurantes.
Uh-huh.
Like you know when the Noma thing came out, the article,
Yeah.
that same day, here in Mexico City. So apparently, these people at this taco stand called Los Parados, you know, whatever. I don't know exactly what they serve. I haven't been there. But apparently, the waiters killed a guest.
What?
because he wouldn't tip.
Oh my god! What?
They killed him. They beat him to death. Four
Damn, bro.
motherfuckers killed this guy because he would not tip. And their excuse was like, "Oh, he's drunk. He was being an asshole, so
He was
we
being an
beat the
asshole,
shit
so
out of
we killed him.
No, serious shit. Look it up on the news. Like the mayor came out and did this whole, instead of like a news thing, she went on Instagram about it.
Yeah, Terror
But they
Restaurantes
literally
Mexico.
killed someone. And
This-
dude, like
Oh fuck, man!
their
There's a
rich their
bunch
cooks,
of shit
like
on
they
here.
live off of tips. It's insane.
Damn, bro! Thanks for bringing this to my attention.
Like seriously, check it out. It's called Terror
Yeah,
Restaurantes.
it's being checked out, and this on the podcast. It's here. People can see what I'm looking at, and it's fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked up. Like, you know, I understand, like, people complain about this, and they have every right to in the U.S. and Europe and everything. But here in Mexico, it's fucking rough, man.
Oh shit! You know what's crazy? I just saw what restaurant it is. La Casa de la Buena Birria.
Yeah.
I saw that place out of a taxi. It was very distinctive, the corner that it's on,
Mm.
when I was over there.
But, like, do you understand, like, the severity of how much people live in the hospitality? So when I was here, before I moved to Mexico City, I was living in Morelia, Michoacan, in my hometown,
Yeah.
where I started. I haven't been back in like 14 years. And this is like right in the middle of pandemic still. I had just left the Bay Area to come, live out here. I wasn't planning on working. And I remember seeing on the news every restaurant worker go on strike about closing restaurants down because of the pandemic. This is a real thing. Like, look it up. They made a whole march to City Hall, and like, it was a big fucking deal. And the thing is, it's like, okay, America, like, we had unemployment, like, businesses to some degree, whether they agree with it or not, were supported. However you want to see it. But that opportunity does not exist for restaurant workers or restaurant business owners.
Right.
You were shut down. You didn't get any money, no support by the government. You were fucked.
Jesus.
And the beautiful thing about it is, like, all these people in hospitality came together and were like, fuck this. We cannot do this because our government won't provide us. They won't help us. And this is all we got. And guess what? They won that fight, and they stayed open, and they followed every fucking regulation that the country put onto them. That was insane. Like, the fact that I came down to Mexico in the middle of a pandemic and I could still work as long as I respected the rules and the laws, I was allowed to.
Right.
Were you still making as much sales? No. Or your operation costs like through the roof or under or whatever, are you breaking even? Yeah. But you were still open. You still had a job. And that was crazy. Like, there's also that beautiful side to it. Like, Mexico City, like, really, as far as, like, the scene and, like, people and whatnot, like, people really stick together. They help each other out a lot. And I've been a recipient of that help, with lawyers from shitty business relationships to whatever purveyors or hookups or whatever. Mexico City has never denied me that, as long as that I paid that back. As long as I showed that I could do my shit and, like, support them as well, I've been welcomed into the community, 100%.
Right.
But that unity is, like, super rare. I've never seen that anywhere.
Fuck. Valid points about Mexico City. Next time I go down there, man, we got to do a podcast. Have you on?
Yeah. I'm down.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm fucking cool fucking conversation that we're having here. I don't like to make these Sucio talks too long. So we will continue this conversation next week if you would like. But I'd love you to call in and let's talk more about this.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
on here, Terrores Restaurantes MX on Instagram. Sinaloa, Mexico is the location that I'm looking at this post that's on here. But thanks for calling in, you and Josh Long. I appreciate it. He actually has some questions for you. Oh, we got Nick Gambino and Platos Locos on here now. You guys showed up way too late, bro. Sucio Talk starts at 10. Where the fuck were you? All right, bro. It's nice talking to you. This podcast is gonna be fucking cool when it comes out. You're in it, so I'll tag you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, man.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot, and hey, man, be safe. Hey, siga la pelea.
Right. Have a good day, man.
Yeah, you
I'll
too.
be talking to you.
Peace out, bro.
Later.
All right, guys. So there was Sucio Talk 108 live. Talked to Josh Long. I talked to Francisco. You can find them on Instagram. Let's see here. I've already searched for both of them. So Francisco Javier Guzman. All right. He's fucking cool as shit. Check this out. That's him eating fucking chicken. That's fucking cool. I wish I could talk to him longer, but bro, I don't want to sit here and be like half asleep over here, right? I just cater to the PGA Tour for American Express over here in Palm Springs, so I'm pretty fucking beat. But anyway, Francisco Javier, and then we got Shared Cultures came through. We got Josh Long. Josh Long, that's his Instagram, B34NS Beans. He's a knife sharpener, chef, photographer, cook with some really cool people, has some really cool points of view. I consider him a friend of the show for sure. So, Nick Gambino, thanks for coming in. You're fucking late, bro. It's New Orleans time. Was it 2 in the morning over there? Is that what time Blake got you coming out of fucking Saint Germain or what? And then Platos Locos, shout out to you. You wrote that article today. I do not subscribe to them, so I will not read it. But just send me your Word document, please, and I'll read it on here next week. Every Monday, live, 10 p.m. Pacific time, Sucio Talk. Peace. Taquero Eddie, have a great night. Sucio Talk. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. These will get better as time goes on. I appreciate everyone. Call in next week, 510-463-1145, suciotalk.com. Sucio Talk is everywhere. Sucio Talk will win. And you will too. Everybody be safe doing whatever you're doing, working out, running, fucking banging your wife, banging your husband, banging your they, whoever the fuck you're banging. If you're listening to this podcast while you're doing that, that's weird. Don't do that. Anyway, I'll see you next week, Monday. Peace.